All right, this lesson is writing equations of lines, and you'll notice as I'm going through this that I move pretty quickly because one, you can pause the video and rewatch anything, but also this is meant to be a refresher. This is not the first time that you're learning things, so you may notice that I skip certain steps in showing my work. Again, this is a refresh. If you need more help than this, please seek extra help. So we're talking about lines written in the form y equals mx plus b. This is called slope-intercept form. Make sure you know the wording for that, slope-intercept form. So I might give you an equation that looks like this. And this would be an equation written in slope-intercept form. The slope in this problem would be -3/2, and the b value would be 4. This is our y-intercept. As an ordered pair, that's the typical way to give an intercept as an ordered pair, 0, 4. Now, if I want to take this equation and rewrite it into standard form, standard form formula is capital AX plus capital BY equals C. And there's some rules for standard form. There's no fractions allowed anywhere in the equation, so A, B, and C must be integers. We do not want A to be a negative number, so he must always be positive. I think that's it. So no fractions, and A must always be positive. So now we're going to rewrite this equation into standard form. So the first thing I would do is move the x to the left-hand side. So I would have 3/2 x plus y equals 4. And then I have to look at my rules. So I can't have any fractions and a must be positive. So I'm going to multiply this equation by 2 to get rid of the fraction. And that's my answer in standard form. If the 3/2 was negative in this problem, if we just pretend that was a negative, then I would have multiplied this equation by -2 instead to also get rid of that negative sign. Okay, if you have an equation that looks like this, y equals 3, this is a horizontal line, right? It would look something like this. For that, we have an m value of 0. And our y-intercept would be 3 or 0, 3. Just check something real quick. Yep, good. I learned a mnemonic device, hoi vux. So hoi is horizontal, H for horizontal lines. This is actually the number 0. They have a 0 slope. Horizontal lines have a 0 slope. And it's always in the form y equals, like this equation. For vux, vux would be a vertical line, u undefined slope, and it's always an equation x equals. So example 3, if we had x equals 3, we would say, oh, this is a vertical line. Hoi vux, vertical line. So in that case, we would have m is undefined. We would say there's no y-intercept. You can look at that graph, right? A vertical line would not hit the y-axis unless it was x equals 0, right? So x equals 0 is the exception. That does have a y-intercept. It actually has an infinite number of y-intercepts. So that's just a side note there. And we just said this is a vertical line. Right? Note that these are already in standard form, so I wouldn't say to you, please write these answers, rewrite them into standard form. They already are in standard form. All right, so I might say write the equation of a line given that the slope is 1/2 and the line passes through the point -6, 8. Okay, that would be the wording of the question. You have 2 ways to do this question. One option is to use slope-intercept form. You could substitute in this for m, obviously, -6 for x, and 8 for the y. So your equation would look like this. And then you would solve for the b value. So solving this, I'm not going to show all the work, you would get b equals 11. And so now that you have the m and you have the b, those are the two things you need to write your final answer. So your final answer would be y equals 1/2 x plus 11. Okay? Or, right, to start this problem over again, you could have used point slope form. So this is point slope form. And instead of substituting in for x and y, you would have substituted in for x1 and y1. So this would have become y minus your y1 value, which is 8, equals 1/2 x minus, here's the tricky part, you're substituting in -6 for your x1. Watch out for that double negative that's going to appear. Right? So this is going to become a positive. So then I would distribute, move everything around, add the 8 over to both sides, and you get the same answer. I don't care which method you choose, as long as you get one of these final answers. So let's say now I say write the equation of a line, given that the line passes through 4, 3, and -2, 5. In order to write the equation of a line, you need two things. You need the m and you need the b. This is what you're trying to find. So the first thing I would do here is find the slope using our slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Or you just say subtract the y's on top, subtract the x's on the bottom. Just make sure your order stays the same. So I'm going to do 5 minus 3 on the top. Keep the order the same. So if I did 5 minus 3, I got to go the same way. -2 minus 4. So 5 minus 3 is 2. -2 minus 4 is -6. Simplify that. My slope is -1/3. Now I have to try to find my b. To find the b, I'm going to do what I did in example 4 right before this. I'm going to use this as my m, and then pick your favorite ordered pair. I like 4, 3 because it doesn't have any negative signs in it. So you can use this as your x and this as your y. And you can either do y equals mx plus b, or you can do point slope form, whichever one you prefer. And if you do the slope-intercept form, which is this first guy, you're going to get your b value of, it's a fraction here, I think, 13/3. Once you get your b value, you'll write your final answer. If you do the point slope form, instead of finding your b value, you'll actually just skip straight to this step and the b value shows up in your final answer. If you were rewriting this into standard form, okay, first thing I would do is move that x over to the other side. And now you've got two fractions in your problem. You would multiply by 3 because that's the LCD of those two denominators that you have, right? We want to pick the least common multiple to get rid of that, because we want to keep the numbers as small as possible. So this would get us x plus 3y equals 13. When it comes to fractions, the general rule in my class is fractions only, no decimals. I don't care what type of fraction you give, meaning improper versus mixed number. Just make sure that they're simplified. If we're talking about slope, Do not give a mixed number. Slope cannot be a mixed number. Make sure you star and highlight that. Slope cannot be a mixed number. Okay, number 6. Parallel and perpendicular. We might say write the equation of a line that is parallel to the line 4x plus 12y equals negative 24 and passes through 9, negative 8, right? Remember, anytime you're trying to write the equation of a line, you're looking for two pieces of information, your m and your b. Once you get those two things, you're good to go. So parallel, just a note, the symbol for parallel looks like the number 11, right? So you might see that symbol instead of the word. So if we are parallel to that line, that means that the lines will have the same slope. Parallel means same slope. So I need to figure out the slope of this boxed line I have right now. You can't find the slope. This is in standard form, SF, standard form. You can't find the slope from standard form. You first have to rearrange this equation into slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to move my 4x to the right-hand side, divide both sides by 12, remembering sharing is caring, so divide that 12 into all your terms. And so the slope of my line is negative 1/3. Because it's parallel, that's also going to be my slope, negative 1/3. So I'm going to put that in my bubble over here. If, let's just pretend for a second and then I'll erase it, if the problem had said perpendicular, and this is the symbol for perpendicular, then your slopes are opposite reciprocals. I'm just going to abbreviate, opposite reciprocals, which means that opposite means positive versus negative, and reciprocal means that you flip the fraction. So opposite reciprocal of this would be a positive, and then flip the fraction 3/1, which is just positive 3. So if the problem had said perpendicular, I would have used positive 3 for my slope instead as I move forward. So now I still need my b, right? I still have this blank b here. So now you go back to what we've done in the previous examples. You take your m, you take your ordered pair, and you pick your poison, right, is the expression. So y equals mx plus b, or y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, right? I'm not going to work through all this. You get a b value of negative 5. And so your final answer is y equals negative 1/3 x minus 5. Final answer. Okay, 2 more examples. We're on number 7. Let's say it said write the equation of a line that's perpendicular to x equals 5 and passes through 2, 7. Okay, remember we're looking for two things, m and b. So I see the word perpendicular, well, the symbol at least. So I'm thinking opposite reciprocal slope. So I have to find out the slope of this line right here so that I can do the opposite reciprocal of that. Well, what's the slope of x equals 5? This is one of our special lines. I have to think hoi vux. This is the vux, right? It's an x equals, that's what that x is in the vux. So this is a vertical line with an undefined slope. So what's the opposite reciprocal of undefined? Okay, gets a little confusing. So why is it undefined? It's undefined because that meant the denominator was 0 at some point. So if I do the opposite reciprocal of this fraction, the 0 would become the numerator. 0 divided by anything is 0. So you can just memorize that 0 and undefined are opposite reciprocals of each other. So 0 and undefined are opposite reciprocals of each other, right? And just kind of memorize that moving forward. Now, when it comes to Hoy-Vux problems and it's parallel and perpendicular, I just think, right? Instead of doing algebra work, I just think, right now I have a line of x equals 5 that I'm thinking about. That's a vertical line. My line is perpendicular to that. So if my line is perpendicular, we just said that it has a slope of 0. What does a line look like that has a slope of 0, right? My line will then be a horizontal line, Hoy, right? Horizontal line with a 0 slope. I also know the equation will be y equals. Y equals a number. The question is, what's that number? That number is going to be the y-intercept, the b value, okay, the y-intercept. Where do we get that number from? Like, do I think that the y line is horizontal here? Or maybe that line is all the way down here. How do I know? The way I know is by that last clue. The line has to pass through the point 27. So I'm doing this graphically for a second, just so you have a visual, but let's say the point 27 is here. That means my line must look like this, which means it must hit at 7, right? So this number here is going to be your y-intercept. You could have also solved this problem algebraically. I'm not a fan of it. I just like to think, right? I picture this graph in my head, but you could have done y equals mx plus b or your point slope form. You could have put this ordered pair into the equation. You would put your m equals 0 in there and then solve this. So you get 7 equals b. That also would have worked. All right, last example is actually a review of graphing and linear equations. So let's say we had negative 6y is less than 12x plus 18, and the question is graph it. So in order to graph a line, you want to first put it into slope-intercept form. So I would start by dividing both sides by negative 6, and it's an inequality. So remember, when you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative, you have to reverse that inequality symbol. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you must reverse that inequality symbol. So this would become negative 2x minus 3. I'm doing sharing is caring here. So this is the line now that I want to graph. To graph a line, many options, but the fastest way is to plot the y-intercept first. So 1, 2, 3, that's the y-intercept, 0, negative 3. And then use your slope, the slope is negative 2, to plot more points. Okay, so a refresher on slope, thought bubble. So the slope is negative 2, which is really over 1. That's invisible. The numerator is my rise, and my denominator is my run. The numerator means that rise meaning going up or down. The run means left to right. So I am going to, from this dot, okay, starting at this dot over here, I'm going to go up or down 2 spaces. I'm going to go down because of this negative sign right here. So I'm going to go down 1, 2 spaces on my graph, and then my run is a positive 1, which means I'm going to go to the right because it was positive. So I'm going to go down 2 and right 1. And then I would repeat that. Down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1. You can also go the opposite direction, which is up 2 and left 1. and then you're going to connect the dots. Whoops, whoa, can't do that. Missing glay. Why can't I do that? I forgot something. With an inequality, very important, you have to look at your inequality symbol. Oh, that did not highlight the way I thought it was going to. You have to look at your inequality symbol. If it's a less than or a greater than symbol, when you go to connect the dots, you have to use a dashed line. That's for a less than symbol or a greater than symbol. If the symbol has the equal to sign, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, then you can do that solid line, okay? The last thing we need to do is decide which side of the line to shade. I'm either going to shade this side or I'm going to shade this side. I have to figure out which one. The best thing you can do is test a point. What point do you want to test? Any point you want to, just not a point that's on the line. So don't pick, what is this, 0, -3. Don't pick something on the line. Pick any point you want to, off the line. I love to test 0, 0 because it's super easy to plug into my equation. So I'm going to go back to my original equation, and I'm going back to the original because it helps check for any mistakes I may have made. And I'm going to plug in 0 everywhere I see x and y. Now, if you chose a different ordered pair, then you would plug in the numbers you chose, right? So like 1, 1 or 5, 11. I don't know why you would pick those numbers, but sure. So then I'm going to multiply this and simplify it. I'm not moving anything from one side to the other. Just this left side simplifies to 0, and this whole right side simplifies to 18. Then my next question is this true or false? 0 is less than 18. Is that true or false? That is true. So what does this mean? This means that the point that I tested, okay, right here, 0, 0, this was my test point. The point that I tested made the inequality true. What that means is that it was a solution. 0, 0, my test point, was a solution. And the shading of my graph represents all the solutions. So then I'm going to shade this side of the graph. If my test point had been false, then that means that my test point is not a solution, and therefore I don't want to shade my test point. So if my test point had been false, I would have shaded the opposite side of the line. Okay, so this was very fast. I don't normally teach this fast. It was a review, and that's why I kind of went through it, because you can listen to me on like 2 times speed, because hopefully it's refresher information, not learning information. If there's something you need to rewatch, go back and rewatch it. If you need more clarification on something, send me a message, ask your team, come to an extra help session. All right, guys, see you later.